Hello and welcome to the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. My name is Ross LeCane. I'm bringing my 25 years industry experience together with leading experts around the globe to give you the insights on how to live a better life and grow a profitable mortgage broking business that you are proud of. Welcome to another episode of the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. I'm Ross LeCane. Today I've got a very special guest, Dayrn Heffernan. I've known him for a couple of years now. He's a top broker and one of the top 100 brokers within the country. First time in 2022. Congratulations, Dayrn.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate that. It was a big year. Hopefully I can do it again one day.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll back it up this year. So in terms, you're the director of Trusted Finance Solutions. So give me a bit of a background of, how you got started in the industry and how you got into Trusted Finance Solutions.
Yeah, so just going back a bit, just finished year 12 and then went to university in economics, didn't know anything about mortgage broking back then. I think I finished, I'm sharp my age, I turned 50 last year. So university was quite a while ago, to be fair. But did economics at university, and that was kind of like a big passion of mine, economics and financial markets. After university, I did a postgrad at the stock exchange, which back then was called the Securities Institute, now called FinSIA. That was kind of my goal, to get into the stockbroking world effectively. But kind of around that time, the internet was getting big and I could see that people were trading online. I thought maybe that's not going to pan out that industry as much as I wanted to. So I ended up working in the banks and getting a job in some of the banks as a credit assessor early on out of uni. And actually ended up working in the banks for quite a while, sort of working through different areas in the banks as a credit assessor, then sort of senior credit assessor, underwriter. And then my last job was I was an assessor of, also I was the manager of a team at St. George Bank, where the brokers would send the deals in and my team would do the assessment. And that sort of was my way of getting introduced to the broking space. Our team ended up getting made redundant, and one of the companies that was referring business to St. George, they actually asked me if I wanted to come and work for them as a broker. So sort of I had learnt the credit space inside the bank, which was hugely beneficial. And then when I worked on the other side of the fence, I had to learn from scratch about the sales and get accreditations and all that kind of thing and put the deals together. In the bank, you're assessing the deal once it comes to you. The other side of the fence as a broker, you're putting the deal together. So that was quite a new experience. And they did have a little team there, but when I started, everyone had left, so I kind of had to build it back up. So I worked there for about 7 years and built a team and built the book and started to learn a lot about that side. And then, just progressed into starting up Trusted Finance Solutions with a colleague who's now left, and I kind of run it by myself now, but started Trusted Finance Solutions probably 9 years ago now.
Wow.
And just built it up ever since. So that was my sort of segue into broking, from uni to working on the other side of the fence and now the broking side of the fence. But I've got to say, working in the bank is a massive help. I know it's a big pathway for a lot of brokers, but I do find that helped massively, to be fair.
Yeah, and it's very similar, mate. You've got me by 2 years. I'm only 48, so you're 50. You got me by a couple of years.
Yep.
But our backgrounds are very similar. I was in a credit union and I worked in the credit union. I worked in a credit area and assessed personal loans and mortgages. And you're right. I think it's a great background. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you jump from the fence to looking at, everything that's potentially wrong with a deal, to starting to go to the other side of the fence where you're going, how can I make this, get approved, and how can I present it in its best light? And I find that some brokers struggle with that in terms of, they've got their credit hat on rather than their solution hat on. So, rather than looking for ways to make a deal work, they'll look at the other thing in terms of why it doesn't work, because they've had their sort of the bank sort of hat on, right? So how did you find that sort of transition going from, having the credit hat on to being more of a, I've got to come up with a solution?
Yeah, I think when you're in the bank, obviously you've got your risk hat on, as you said, where you sort of trying to find a way, is this within policy? If it's within policy, that's fine. If it's outside policy, then can we do an exception or should we do an exception for the right client? I was generally pretty aggressive in trying to get deals through because I had a lot of good relationships with the brokers who were sending deals in, probably why the company, wanted me to work for them. But I was generally probably not as conservative as what I should have been on the credit space, to be honest. But
You were one of the good guys. You were one of the ones
I
that
was,
had
to be
common
honest, now I
sense,
think
right?
about it.
Yeah.
There wasn't much that I didn't want to do for clients. But back then they had these like no deposit loans, these really high gearing loans. So they were the ones where you'd shy away from a little bit more compared to the lower risk. But I'm always of that sort of, if it's a low LVR deal, then we should be able to try and find to make it work, because the reality is if it falls over, then the bank's not going to lose. So that was always my sort of motto. But there's always, of course, deals you can't do. But on this side of the fence, obviously every deal should be done. There's deals again you can't do, but you try and find an angle. There's not many deals you don't take on. I have had some good advice from some brokers that say, you make your money by knocking back deals and just don't take one. Don't dump those hours and hours and hours into deals. But I sometimes don't take deals on, but genuinely I try and find a way to make it work. Because I think as a broker, the beauty of being a broker as opposed to working in bank is you've got so many options, even though there might be some more expensive options, but you've just got so many tools in your armory that you should really be able to get most deals to work somewhere. So I usually try and find ways to make deals work in most cases. But I think getting back to your question, I was pretty lenient as a credit guy, to be honest. So when I come on the other side of the fence, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. So you come from the bank and then you start Trusted Finance Solutions, and
Yes.
obviously, the first year or so in a broking business is genuinely tough, right? So how did you sort of get established and sort of start to grow your business?
Yeah, so I probably got a little bit lucky in that my business colleague, she was a bit of a gun in that she was working in the bank at the time. I was working in the broking firm. She was working in the bank. She had a lot of referral partners. So she left the bank. A lot of those referral partners came with her. So my role within our firm was going to be, she was going to be bring the business in, and I was going to write the business because I was already the broker that had all the accreditations and knew all the policies for the bank. So, but interestingly, when I left, I just found that I had as much business basically as what she did, just from existing clients wanting to come across and, people hearing what I was doing and wanting to help me out. And I ended up getting quite a bit of business early on that I've never really struggled for business. That's one area that I've been like touched or blessed with. I've never really struggled for leads. I'm a big believer in if you're half decent at what you do and you always put the client first and try and do the right thing by the client, I'm just a big believer that you'll get business. Maybe that's not the right angle, because I know some people struggle getting business, but I've just always found that always putting the client first and doing the right thing by the client, they always just want to keep referring. And that old, I've got a friend at the barbecue that I've got a broker, I've got a guy, use my guy, that kind of thing. So I've always been that person that's got those kind of leads, apart from like the referral partners that you do establish on the business side over time. But I've never really had trouble getting business even from the get-go. I've always been very, very lucky in that area.
Yeah, I think, from what I've known, from knowing you for the last couple of years and working with you, you've got you've got a relaxed sort of manner that gives people that sort of calm confidence, to be able to sort of do business with you. And I think with the banking knowledge, what comes is what I say, that sort of baseline of the pyramid is, your credit, the policy, and how to get deals approved. And so, when you're saying you're putting the client's best interest at heart, you're bringing that wisdom from many years of experience. So, what you say you're going to do, you obviously can deliver on.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably a bit of truth to that as well. But yeah.
And in terms of obviously, so that you start, you sort of grow the business. When do you sort of get your first employee and your first person to help you out?
Yeah, that was probably one area that I was a bit apprehensive of early on, just, paying that first wage to someone. So definitely for those brokers going through that early stage where they're setting up a business and they're, not sure what they should do, whether they should get someone on, absolutely was the best thing ever did. You know, rather than sitting there keen in deals and apply online and doing the compliance, if you can get someone in to do it. Actually got my business colleague at the time, sister, who actually works with me now as my main offsider. She started early on, probably within about the first 6 months of business. And that was just a game changer in terms of just freeing us up to like bring the business in, and having her behind the scenes, like doing all the apply online and compliance and following deals through to settlement. That was without doubt probably the best decision I made in business early on. Definitely haven't made all the right decisions, or, you know, definitely wouldn't say I'm the best businessman, but that was really good. We also went through a period where we also got some extra help with an offsider who would load the deals when she got busy. We'd also have a team member who wasn't on wages, but we just pay like a set fee to load the deals behind the scenes and to help out there as well. And that was also super helpful before we sort of build a bigger team. But yeah, that was definitely a bit of a scary step, which all brokers go through initially, you know, having to pay that wage, especially when you're just starting out. But yeah, definite game changer, because our numbers went right up thereafter because we could just focus on bringing in more clients.
You know, from the time when you employed to the time when your numbers increased, like what was it within months? Was it in 6 months, 12 months? How much investment ahead of growth did you have to do in your case?
Yeah, I think historically I'm probably a little bit more reactive, probably not the best in terms of having a vision and, you know, setting plans in place to hit that target, for example. Probably do a little bit of that, but probably not my biggest strength, but probably a little bit more reactive. You get busy, then you put someone on. And again, it's probably not the smartest way to do it, but that's kind of a bit from the old school. But yeah, in terms of the question and the team member, Cian, coming on board, and then like the numbers basically just probably in a year they doubled, I'd say. You know, obviously they start at a relatively small base when you're first starting out, but like, yeah, I'd have to go back. It was about 9 years ago, but yeah, the numbers significantly went up by having the team member there. And from there, you see the benefit, and then you go, well, if I can get one, then I can put another team member on. I can put another team member on. I can put another. So then my wife ended up working in the business as another like processor, and doing compliance. And then, you know, had some guys overseas doing that as well with like VAs, etc. So yeah, we built a bit of a team around that, but that started from that first initial resource.
Yeah, definitely. And so when we sort of fast forward to where you're at today, in terms of, you know, where is the majority of your sort of business coming from? What are the different channels that you've got in the business at the moment?
So obviously, like most brokers, you get a lot of leads from your existing database, and there's, you know, a number of leads coming from that source. As I said earlier, that old, you know, I've got a broker at the barbecue, he's my guy sort of thing. So I get a lot of leads that way, which is great. And I'm always, whenever I do get a lead from a client, I'll always either send them something or at least give them a thank you on SMS or a quick call saying, hey, thanks heaps for referring that your friend have just had the loan approved, for example. And I think even that, just something simple like that, just goes a long way and is another touch point in cementing that relationship with a client.
Do you have a go-to gift, or
I haven't actually got one, to be honest. Sometimes it's hampers.
Personalize it to each client?
Yeah, hamper sometimes might be just like movie tickets or gift voucher. And again, don't always do it, but mainly for clients that might be referring sort of regularly. Existing clients are referring regularly, they'll potentially get something. So, but every client will definitely get a phone call or a thank you from me, usually SMS or phone call. But yeah, that's kind of the stock standard, what most brokers get. You get obviously your existing database referring to you, given, especially if you're servicing them well, then there's no reason they won't refer. Probably the biggest referral source would be my accountants and financial planners. That's probably one of my biggest areas of strength in terms of like helping drive the business, because often those leads are a bit chunkier. So yeah, and also probably like business bankers and private bankers. I've found that's a bit of a niche as well, which maybe a lot of brokers aren't tapping into historically, but I found that can be quite rewarding as well.
I want to dig more into this area, because I know you, and working with you, I know this is an area you do particularly well, right? So with referral partners, and let's focus on accountants, what do you think is important about, you know, really adding value and building a relationship with an accountant as a referral partner?
Yeah, so with accountants, I think often there's kind of like a director or maybe a couple of directors, and then they'll have a team underneath them. I think one of the keys is the directors will only refer so much. And one of the keys is to try and get out and meet the team and then try and get the team referring to the director. So then you'll start seeing more flow. Obviously, if you're getting leads from just the directors, that's fine. But in terms of getting a bit of leverage, then that's one good thing. In terms of what works well with the accountants, or even going back one step, one niche which I don't think a lot of brokers are doing is that each client that you're working with will generally have an accountant. So I've got leads from accountants, even just getting the name of the accountant and just emailing the accountant who didn't even refer the deal and just saying, hey, Joe Bloggs just settled a loan. I know you're his accountant. Just like, he said an investment property. You might want to get a depreciation schedule for your client. And the accountant will often write back saying, hey, thanks so much. I wasn't expecting that. And then, you'll just put them on your marketing list. So I'll reach out into a month. And I've developed relationships just that simple way of not getting a warm introduction, just sort of creating that out of nowhere, which I don't think a lot of brokers are doing. So a lot of brokers saying, oh, where's my next lead going to come from? Every client that you're working with has an accountant, may have a financial planner, may have worked with a real estate agent or a buyer's advocate. It's just tapping into that sort of network within the solicitor conveyancer, tapping into that. And I find the accountants can be quite receptive to that. Maybe they have a broker already or don't have a broker or had a broker that hasn't worked out, and you could be there at the right time, just tapping into that. And I found that's actually worked well for me. And you're just tapping into that broker, that accountant post-settlement, and just giving the heads up, the deal settled. With accountants, I find that they don't always want something in terms of like a payment or anything, but they just want someone that can add value, someone that can talk the talk, someone that understands the structures, someone that understands the structures and knows the investment property side, or it might be the development side, or whatever it might be, to someone that can add value that they don't have to sit there and explain all the financials to, someone that can extrapolate the financials and understand the flow of money, especially for a more complex structure. And that's probably one advantage that I've had while working in the prior accounting firm, where I really got, going back even further, when I was working in the banks, I got sent up to Sydney to Cogra, and they, I had to do a course on the financials and learning how that worked. And then working in the accounting firm, all the clients were self-employed clients. So I had to learn that on the fly pretty quickly when I was working in the accounting firm, because every client that got referred to me from the internal accountants, they all were very quite complex and multiple entities and flow of funds and that kind of stuff. So all those kind of things, the accountants, they love. They just want someone that can understand the structure. Because I know a lot of brokers, some brokers don't want to do self-employed because they just find it all too complex. So if you're a broker that can understand that, you've kind of got a little bit of a leg up on some other brokers. So that's probably my little niche, understanding financial structures quite well.
Yeah, definitely. So, you're a natural fit for an accountant because of your accounting and your credit background, and they love that because it's, this is the value outside of the transaction. You're not wasting their time, that you're backing them up, giving them credibility in terms of what they're doing. And obviously, if they're professional, their referral is an extension of them. So they want a sort of like-minded type person, which obviously you fit the bill for, which is great. And then you mentioned financial planners, and financial planners are an interesting one because sometimes their ideal clients don't match yours. So tell me how you've had success with financial planners.
So with financial planners and also with accountants as well, another thing I found has worked really well with actually had a really good financial planning referral, which I don't have anymore, because the referral relationship was going so well, and he saw how much he was feeding me that he actually wanted me to set up a broking business within his business. So I actually helped him, the financial planner, set up a broking business, a mortgage broking business, which I've got a good relationship with him. I was happy to help him out because he gave me so many leads over the years. But that actually stemmed, that lead, which is another way of getting into an accounting or a financial planning firm, is just showing your commitment. In that, what I did with him was I actually became a client. So he said we sort of met, and there was sort of some leads going back and forth, but there wasn't a lot. And I thought, I can see big potential here. I actually said to him, hey, can I become a client, financial planning client? And as soon as I became a financial planning client, it kind of cemented our relationship, and all of a sudden the floodgates opened and the leads started flowing. So I'd say that to any brokers that do see a potential with a referral partner or a potential referral partner, if you become a client, it can really cement that relationship where the floodgates can potentially open. And that really worked well in that particular one. Yeah,
And what
I'd
was a
say
typical lead? What was a typical lead that you got from a financial planner?
typical lead. I mean, it's just a bit of everything: refinances, purchases, generally good loan sizes. This financial plan in particular was very aggressive with the marketing. So they used to actually kind of like a new financial planner up and coming, but they used to do a lot of marketing on like Google ads and Facebook ads, these kind of things, and they'd get 100 leads a month, if you can believe that. So of those, they might get 20% that proceeded, but a lot of the financial planning leads that didn't proceed, they were potential finance clients. So yeah, saw a heap of leads. Probably my biggest regret is losing them, but still good friends, still a financial planning client. I'm happy to see them being successful, but yeah, lots of different kinds of lead, bit of everything. Usually not too complex. Normally a lot of pay as you go stuff, which balanced out the complexity of the accountants, which was good. Decent loan sizes, good clients that wanted to like build their wealth, so they were very receptive to advice.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, the thing when you are looking at financial planners, some financial planners, only deal with, say, 50 clients, and their ideal clientele maybe sort of 65 and above, right? And they want big, super balances and money to invest, which sometimes doesn't stack up well with a mortgage broking client, right? So you've really, it sounds like your one was an up and coming, doing lots of marketing and generating a lot of leads. So that was like an ideal mix for, good referrals to a mortgage broker, right? So I think, when the brokers are looking at this, have a look at how much business they've actually got coming in, and do they have the potential to sort of be that partner that's going to refer quite a bit of business.
I think also with accountants is, and again, whether this is an existing client that the accountant's referred, but even more so maybe someone that isn't. Just say, for example, as I said before, you might have a lead and that client's got an accountant. You might see that client hasn't been structured correctly in terms of, I know we can't give like accounting advice or legal advice, financial advice, but you might see that, for example, give an example, maybe the husband's running the business, but then the husband and the wife are both on the titles of all the property. So you think maybe it might make sense to take the husband off the home title for asset protection, and just having that sort of thought process and letting the accountant know, that can add a lot of value with the accountant, where they say, hey, this is good, this guy's actually picked this up. You might win business that way. Also, another one is at tax planning time, where the accountant's doing a bit of work with the client. If you've got a client, a lot of my clients will say, hey, when it comes tax planning time, sort of you can send it like a blanket email out, sort of like March coming to tax planning, and say, hey, you should be speaking to your accountant if you've got any plans of doing any lending over the next year. Have a chat to your accountant and then get me in on those meetings so that we can review financials to see if you're going to have enough income to do what your plans are. And I find that's another way of getting in with potential accountants to get business. It's all just really with that stuff, just sort of being on the front foot. And as I say, just showing that you can add value. Like what can you add value? How can you add value that maybe someone else can't, or can you show an accountant something that other brokers aren't showing them, and being on the front foot and just showing those little things like depreciation schedules and tax planning, these kind of things that can go a long way in trying to win a new referral partner.
Oh, definitely. Because, all above board things that accountants can do that will make a difference from a borrowing capacity point, right? So I love what you're saying in terms of, before you finalize the accounts, what are the plans? Because, I know, chatting with my accountant, we used to say you can't have a wealth creation strategy and a tax minimization strategy together, right? It doesn't work, right? So you've got to balance the two, and you look at how much money they could potentially save in tax to what they could create in wealth. For example, if you get them an extra $1 million worth of property that goes up 7%, that's 70 grand in growth in a year. They're not going to save 70 grand in a year, right? From a tax perspective, but the benefit of having these types of conversations where you get it, right? You get the leverage, you get how it works, and you understand the tax planning, as you say, can go a long way to providing value to an accountancy partner.
Yeah, that's a very powerful one, because that's the whole thing with accountants. They're trying to get the taxes low to add value to the client, save them $1, and we're trying to get the income up. But I have used that a lot of times with clients, where think big picture. Let's say you save 10 grand on your tax, but if we can get the income up a little bit more and you pay 10 grand tax, pay that 10 grand tax trying to save, you might be able to get into a property. And if that, as I said, if $500,000 property goes up by 50 grand, then you're going to be ahead. So it's also having that conversation with clients and changing that mindset that they have.
Yeah, and exactly. And that 50 grand is not just that year, it's each and every year,
Exactly.
So over 10 years, it's $500,000 for 1 year where they maybe paid an extra 10 grand tax, right? So it's exactly what you're saying. So the next referral partners that you mentioned that you said was, business bankers and private lenders. Now, this is an interesting one. Not too many brokers that I've sort of chatted to, would say that these are a referral partners. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's probably my, when you did ask me to come on the podcast, Ross, I was trying to think, what value can I add here? Because, I'm definitely not the best broker. But I do some things well, certainly do a lot of things not as well as I'd like to, working on those. But I thought of a few different areas, and I felt that was one area that brokers are not tapping into, just knowing the brokers that I speak to that don't really tap into this. But in my 2022 year, which was my biggest year, that was actually one of my biggest lead sources for the year, or the biggest lead source in terms of loan sizes, like deals over 10 mil referred by business bankers and private bankers. With those private banking deals, when a private banker gets a deal and they can't do it, usually these private banking clients, they've got big dollar clients, like big dollar loans. And the last thing the private banker wants is for a deal to be declined that they can't do, and then they lose everything off their book. So a lot of private bankers are happy to work with brokers. So you'll get a call from the private banker that you've got a relationship with. You've obviously given them deals over the years and build a bit of a relationship up. And, I usually just say to them, hey, if you've got any deals that you can't do, let me know. And then the way I position is if that client gets declined, you don't want to lose that full portfolio off your book. So if it's a purchase, for example, that's been declined, you give me the purchase, I'll look after just that purchase. I'll commit not to refinance anything else. The client's got to win because he's got the deal done. The broker's got to win because he's got a deal done. The private banker's got to win because although he hasn't had that deal done, he hasn't lost the whole client off the book. The private banker can then maintain the client with myself, and we can manage the client together, and then we can do deals in the future together. So I find that's can be quite lucrative in terms of getting deals done with the private bankers and business bankers. Private bankers probably more of a niche for me than the business bankers, but with the private bankers, because they can be quite big clients, you don't need too many to make it worthwhile. They are more complex deals. They are harder to do. There's more work involved. But that's one area that I've found has worked well for me. Kind of got a little bit lucky in that I've got private bankers that I use at all the banks, and one a couple of guys in particular have been really good referral sources just because they got deals that they wanted to do with their bank, but their bank, for whatever reason, couldn't do the deal due to policy, and then had to obviously move the deal elsewhere to another lender.
Yeah. So can you give an example of to give it some context, Can you just choose like an example of a deal that a private banker is not using any names, of course, but an example of a deal that you've been able to get from a private banker and make a success of it?
One deal in particular, private banker called me. I'd actually done a couple of deals with this private banker, good sized loans, maybe 15 mil for a couple of deals. Had a good relationship with him, and just rang me up and said, hey, I've got this deal, existing one of our clients. All their income's from overseas. When we did the deal originally, we were happy to take the overseas income, but things have tightened up. We're not taking the overseas income anymore. We won't help him. He's just bought 3 properties with 35 mil worth of contracts. Can you help? I'm like, I'd love to help if I can. And there was in this particular case, very short time frame. So I actually got a deal done with Latrobe on that one because it was a tricky one, paying higher rates just because the settlement timeframes are very short. Got the deal done, and then after about a year, then got a deal done with another private bank. I had a year to think about where I was going to place it and all that kind of stuff. Ended up finding another private lender, a competition of the first bank, that looked at it a lot more friendly than what the policy is, just because they saw the client was so strong and were happy to consider it and sort of made an exception. But they did take some of that overseas income and do the deal. So I ended up doing the deal and then actually refinancing it again within the 2-year period. to get the client back to lower rates, like the rates that they should have been on initially, but just couldn't get at the time with the first lender.
Yeah, exactly. And so you got a solution in a tight time frame for obviously one of their big, bigger type of clients. So I imagine they had other banking and investments and so forth that private banker didn't want to lose, and so you were able to, put them to some non-banks, maintain the relationship with their bank, and everyone's happy.
Exactly. So the client's now got some lending with the initial bank, which, I've got a good relationship with the private bank. I didn't want to refinance that, no problem. And then the client got the solution, and then he settled the new deals. Plus, we then refinanced him later on, got him like much more competitive rates than what we could originally. Just because, but to be fair, the Latrobe were fantastic in doing the first deal, because not a lot of lenders would consider it at the time. As you know, like there's a lot of banks have different appetite changes over time, especially with foreign income, and developers and these kind of things. Sometimes the banks can be aggressive in that space. Sometimes they can pull back depending on the current climate. So yeah, it was one of those ones.
Nice. So you got 2 cracks at a $35 million deal. That can't.
I think it was about 28. It's about 28 overall. Yeah. So we got lucky there, but yeah, it was definitely a good one. But yeah, the crux of it is that, in terms of nuggets for potential young brokers listening to this, get your network as far as you can and wide as you can with the private bankers and the business bankers, and just keep in touch with them, develop relationships, and just ask them, say, hey, is there any deals you guys can't do? I'm happy to try and help you guys out, and just touch on those points that, if you give me a lead, I'll commit to not refinancing the rest of the book, but it will just be able to provide a solution for the client, and that's always just worked well for me.
And any 1%ers around maintaining those relationships with the private bankers and business bankers?
Nothing special, just keeping in touch with them, ringing them up, giving them business. That's probably the best one. Just giving a business so that you're sort of front of mind. Again, I probably got a little bit lucky with that big deal in that I just given them 2 deals, and we'd just been out. I took them out to a lunch after the second deal settled, just as a bit of a thank you. And then, yeah, probably within 2 months, this come across their desk and they rang me. I was right place, right time,
Love it.
And
you obviously got it done, right? So
yeah.
Which probably then leads into our next point in terms of, how do you get into doing these types of deals with sort of complex lending and out of the box sort of solutions? How did you sort of get into that niche?
I think because I'd worked inside the bank and had the training, and then I worked in the accounting firm and learned about all the financial planning structures and accounting structures, and had to deal with a lot of self-employed clients. That was a really good grounding for me. And from there, it just meant that when I see deals, I sort of have a good guide. Obviously, once you've, spoken to the banks and you sort of know what the policies are, you can sort of see a deal, and then you can sort of go, okay, I know it goes over here. I do get quite a few deals for clients that have been knocked back. For example, they go to their accountant, so they get knocked back. They go to their accountant. I seem to be the hatchet man that then gets the deal to try and resolve the problem. Where I then most brokers are the same. You get a deal, you can't go to bank A, B, C, D. You have to go to bank E, F, or G because of this policy niche, for example. So yeah, but having the grounding from on the self-employed side, that's been a big help. The bank's also been great in terms of like low doc deals. You get the odd deal where the accountant might know, the accountant might say to you, hey, this client's earned X amount this year, but I can see by the end of this financial year, they're going to be earning significantly more. And you do that sort of stopgap loan where you settle a deal through a low doc, and then you refinance within the first year as soon as the financials are up and running at that higher level. That's been quite a popular niche over the recent years. But yeah, just definitely the grounding inside the bank with the training and working inside the accounting firm, learning all the accounting structures, that's been a really big, massive grounding for me.
Yeah, I found that as a broker, and similar to you, coming from a credit background, understanding financials really well, coming from that property investment side, you can look at the financials in a different light. And I don't know about you, but part of my process was, hey, I'll get this out of the box type solution, and then I would shop it. Before I submitted it, I would sit down with the head of credit or someone senior in the credit department and say, hey, this is my take on what this should look like. And we can I can, have a conversation, because with these commercial clients and businesses, it's not as black and white as a PAYG, right? The interpretation of the numbers, has some, interpretation. And so, is that a similar sort of strategy to what you do?
Absolutely. I find, to be honest, even on the resi pay-as-you-go deals, I feel I'm always ringing a BDM every deal. Just there's a period when I first started, probably because, again, I've had the business for like 9 years, but prior to that, I was a broker in the accounting firm for 6-7 years. I find in the last 3 or 4 years, especially post-COVID, it's almost like every deal you ring the bank about some little niche, this is what's coming. But definitely on the complex stuff, I mean, on the big complex stuff, you kind of need to do that. Like, I know a recent one I've done with one of the private bankers, and that's one advantage as well with the private bankers and the business bankers. If you're giving them deals, they can do a lot of the groundwork for you and a lot of the grunt work, which is a big help, takes a little bit of pressure off. But they can speak to credit on those deals, especially commercial or private banking. They'll go to credit with the scenario and say, hey, this is what's coming. What do you think, after I put it together and told them about the client and send them the financials? So before you even lodge the deal, you already know, you're already on the front foot. It's rare these days that, I think with a lot of brokers, especially myself, I won't lodge a deal until I know it's basically 95% going to be approved, just because this is the amount of work involved. You can't afford it these days. So definitely on the complex stuff, absolutely got to go to the if it's a residential deal, we'll always have a chat to the BDMs. If it's a commercial or private banking deal, then you'll give the deal to them, basically prep it and get them to go to credit for you to get some kind of feedback before you lodge it. And if it's just a resi deal, often not. For example, let's say it was a St. George deal, Bank of Melbourne, you might even just ring the credit team as a guide just to get a code so you can then lodge that with the deal. But yeah, I'm finding I'm spending a lot of time on that space, prepping the file. But it's good because then when you lodge a deal, it's you've got a high probability of getting it approved rather than just lodging it and guessing, hoping for the best.
Definitely. And, I know when I was broken, there's certain parameters that these private bankers want clients at. So can you give, maybe the brokers that have never used a private banker, what is the profile of a private client that a private banker may be interested in?
Generally, each bank's a little bit different, but generally they're like, just trying to think, maybe incomes at 250 plus and net assets at a certain level. Not exactly sure, but I know with one of the private banks I send a lot of deals, they usually want the loan size is probably the key. They want the loan size from like 5 mil and above. So obviously not every client's going to meet those criteria. I definitely don't find that private banking is like the sharpest in terms of rates. They claim that it's a better service and get more proactive service. But absolutely, in terms of like the advantages in the private banking is that they can massage deals with credit and get them over the line. Like that big deal I told you about before, there was no chance that was going through the resi team, like without getting some like assistance. And that's where you'll get a big value add, that they'll be able to give that assistance and present the deal in a way to help you get it over the line. So you're kind of working as a team to get the deal done for the client. But yeah, it's probably in terms of loan size, like I think some will do a bit lower, but maybe 3 mil and above. But yeah, the ones I work with generally like 5 mil and above, incomes 250 plus, maybe net assets, a couple of mil as a guide, something like that. Everyone's a bit different. Just use that as a bit of a guide.
Yeah, no, in the private banking ones that I've done back in the day, I think that's reasonable, a pretty good guide, which is good. And then in terms of, I think, we've covered the sort of the out of box solutions as well, which sort of comes in with some of those examples that you sort of gave. Is there anything else on sort of getting those out of the box type solutions that you want to add in?
I think with the out of the box stuff, as I said, I do get a bit of that from clients that have been declined. I think that a lot of that just comes with experience, where at the moment, especially in the self-employed space, which is kind of where I play, the banks have been really, really good in terms of new sort of solutions. So some banks, and it's really just knowing the policy. So some banks at the moment are, for self-employed, they'll accept just, notice of assessments for 2 years, or they'll accept which has been great for clients that have been COVID impacted. Got COVID income, bank might not be too great on that, but notice of assessment, they're happy to take notice of assessment. Knowing the policies like some banks are taking like directors' wages, salaries, pay slips, even for self-employed these days. Just looking at some of those niches that are out there at the moment, 1 year self-employed versus 2 years, and just knowing what those policies are, that helps massively with out of the box. Because a lot of the times, like, you might get a lead from someone and they're like, "Oh, I've heard this," but then you'll just say, "Oh no, look, I can get this here easily because I know the policy." So knowing the ins and outs of the bank's policy, that's the key, because especially if you know that instantly, when someone calls you and you've got a response on an account that calls you, "I've got this lead, I don't think you can do this," but if you can tell them on the spot, "I can definitely get this done," that goes a long way in building that rapport with the accountant and giving them so they've got that trust in you moving forward, that you want to be the go-to guy, that they ring you and they know they're getting an answer on the spot. And unless you know the policies well, then it's hard to sort of convey that.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree that policy knowledge, and I say this to new brokers coming in the industry all the time, one of the first thing on that baseline of the pyramid as a new broker that you need to know is your credit policy. Know, your top 4 lenders, know them inside out, know all their niches, what they will do and what they won't do, because it will win you so many deals, right? So many deals. All right, awesome. One of the questions that we'll sort of close with, and I ask everyone, is, if you were looking to give advice to a broker that, had aspirations and wanted to be in the top 100 and scale their business, what's one piece of advice that you would give from your years of experience?
Probably a bit old school, but just have a crack. Just because, I think everyone has, dreams and goals that they'd love to achieve. And sometimes you're sitting somewhere and you sort of think, is that ever going to be possible? But unless you actually get off the chair and put a few plans into place to make it happen, then it just simply won't happen. So you just got to have a crack sometimes. Sometimes you'll make mistakes, but as you're learning, then you'll start to learn how to do things better. But yeah, in the broking world, the hardest thing I think is getting leads. That's probably the biggest one. And for me, the accountants have always been a great referral source. So hopefully, those sort of tidbits I gave at the start of today's session will help new brokers get more leads of accountants, because I find that they've always been my best referral source. I know some brokers work with real estate agents and these kind of parties, but which is fine, but it just hasn't been an angle that's ever really worked that well for me. So I think also with that, it's also finding your niche. Like the accountants work for me, you've also got to find your niche, what works for you. If you're someone that has worked as a real estate agent before, then you've got probably heaps of real estate agent contacts, and that might be your niche. In your case, Ross, it was an investment property. So I think one, having a crack, just making the decision that you want to do it and put everything into it, throw everything you've got into it. And 2, probably just find your niche, find out what works for you. I know there's a lot of talk in the industry about diversification and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure works for a lot of people. But I think also finding your niche and just sticking to your niche and doing what you know well, that is also a good angle that's always worked for me. So yeah, they're probably 2 little bits of advice hopefully might help.
Love it. And so true. So true. It's about having a crack. And again, nothing good comes, and it's like the old fishing analogy, right? You won't catch any fish unless you've got your line out, right? So you got to have a crack. You got to put some lines out, and you got to put some bait on the hook as well, to focus on that niche and focus on the area that you can add value, because if you do, they'll bite, and you'll be well fed like yourself, buddy.
Absolutely. They put on a few kilos actually, so all good.
All right. Thanks, Dayrn. It's been a pleasure. So much gold in there. So really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, heaps. Appreciate it. Speak soon.
All right. This has been another episode of the $1 Billion Broker podcast. There's 3 ways if you want to stay in contact. 1, subscribe to the podcast on any of your favorite podcast channels, also available on YouTube. Secondly, join our Facebook group. It's $1 Billion Broker for mortgage brokers. If you're not already a part of it, jump on that. And if you'd like to work with myself in one of our coaching programs, go to billiondolarbroker.com.au and fill out the contact us. And I'd love to have a quick meeting and see how I can help. Until next time, I'll see you soon.